Hi, everyone. I'm Spiro, and welcome to this special live edition of Newsbud Roundtable. Before I introduce our panel for today's discussion, I'd like to remind everyone that Newsbud is only funded and supported by you, the listener. We rely on your support to keep this independent media platform fully operational. Be sure to visit either newsbud.com or our Kickstarter campaign and pledge your support for 100% independent media. Now, this is an all-or-nothing campaign, and we'd like to thank each and every one of you for your continued support. Now, on today's topic, we'll be examining the current U.S. foreign policy strategy, the endless wars, and what we can expect moving forward into the second half of 2017 as the new Trump administration gets settled in. Now, let's bring in our panel. Joining us today is the founder and editor-in-chief of Newsbud.com, Sibel Edmonds.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here.
We're also joined by Pi Ian, who is one of a newer additions to the Newsbud team. He's a senior analyst and a commentator, and his work mainly focuses on the connection between economics and geopolitics.
Greetings, everyone. Glad you can join.
And we are also joined with the host of Newsbud's Russian newspaper monitor, Professor Filip Kovacevic.
Hi.
Now, the title for this special live roundtable is Who is Next on the U.S. Chopping Block, Iran or North Korea? Professor, I'd like to begin with you. Recently, you had a very interesting article and a video that can be found on newsbud.com. I'd like to reference both of those now. The video is titled, If the U.S. Attacks, Russia Will Support North Korea. And the article, both you can find on newsbud.com, is the North Korean connection of the Russian ambassador Andrei Karlov. And of course, that was the Russian ambassador that was assassinated in Turkey very recently. Now, Philip, I have to admit both of these came as a bit of a surprise to me, but they make total sense. How did you reach these conclusions, and what do you expect to see to play out on the geopolitical stage?
Thank you for your question, Spiro. Let me first go back about 15 years from now and look at the George W. Bush's State of the Union address. In January 2002, George W. Bush declared that three countries represented the axis of evil: Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. Well, since 2002, Iraq has been invaded and supposedly pacified. We know that's not true. But in the vision of the neocons, it's been pacified, it's been taken over, and now two are left. So one down, two to go. We've got Iran and we have North Korea. And I think that North Korea is going to come to the chopping board, as you expressed it, before Iran. And this may lead to a catastrophic war in Asia. And how did I come to this conclusion? Well, I mean, let's for instance, look at the Russian newspapers. I read them every day, and I notice that what they emphasize is the unseen militarization of going on in the Korean Peninsula, in and around the Korean Peninsula. For instance, recently, the U.S. has sent a third air carrier to the region. So in addition to USS Carl Winston and USS Ronald Reagan, now we have the USS Nimitz with all the other ships being located near North Korea. We also have the CIA setting up a separate mission center for North Korea. Let me remind our viewers that the CIA does not have a separate mission center either for Russia or for China or for Iran, but they have one now for North Korea. On the other side, we also have the increase of warmongering rhetoric. I got the chance to look at some North Korean publications in English, and I noticed that they refer to the United States as a great force of imperialism, and that they're frequently making threats not only against their neighbors, South Korea and Japan, but also against the US mainland. In fact, in one of these articles from the end of last year, they talk about a preemptive strike of justice. This is a quote against the United States. So we may be coming close to some kind of a road of no return. But let's look at the Russian officials and the Russian experts and what they say about it. If you look at the Russian officials, I would mention just one of them at this time. That's the Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu. Recently, he gave a report to the upper house of the Russian parliament, the Federation Council, and he essentially said that there has been the very dangerous build-up of tensions in the Korean Peninsula that he has not seen for a while. In addition, the Russian experts cited in the Russian newspapers and the Russian tabloid press speak about catastrophic scenarios. They're saying that there is no way that the U.S. could organize a quick special forces operation against the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. So there is no way that the U.S. will be able to decapitate the government, so to speak, really fast, which means that they will have to engage in a long and intensive air campaign. And so some of these Russian experts are noting the figures. Even if the attack is sudden and massive, it would have to involve 2,500 planes, and it could lead to thousands of dead. So essentially a catastrophic scenario. However, it's very important to point out that geopolitically speaking, North Korea is a buffer state in East Asia. See, the US and NATO have breached the buffer state belt in Eastern Europe. In other words, they have expanded into the Baltic states and the former Warsaw Pact states, and now they're on the Russian borders. Russia is not going to allow the US to come onto the Russian borders in East Asia. As we know, North Korea borders with Russia. So Russia will defend North Korea at every price, at every cost. However, at the same time, I think the Russians would be glad to see the US bogged down in East Asia with a catastrophic war that we are talking about, because they have essentially lost a lot of initiative in Eastern Europe. The US has expanded. The war has started in Ukraine, and it may start in some other regions of Eastern Europe at some point of time in the future. So the Russians would like to see a distraction in East Asia. And North Korea has been preparing for something like, for some scenario like this for a long, long time. So in other words, a small spark may lead to a big conflagration, and the Russians will be on the side of North Korea in order essentially to retaliate against the United States and NATO, taking advantage of the Russian weakness and expanding in Eastern Europe and destroying the buffer state region that's very important for keeping the stability in Europe.
Well, that's things are unfolding pretty quickly, actually, and we just have this new administration coming in. Filip, you were just here in Central Oregon at Newsbud headquarters. We were doing some work in the studio, and you and Sibel and myself were having a discussion on some of these very topics, and that's kind of where we came up with the idea here for this specific roundtable, because we ended up having a bet going, basically trying to asking the question, who is next on the chopping block, on the U.S. foreign policy chopping block, Iran or North Korea? Now, Sibel, what is your position here currently? Are you still sticking with your initial position?
Well, as far as this particular bet is concerned, yeah, you bet. Three of us had a lively discussion over a nice dinner, Professor Kovacevic, you and myself, and it was a great discussion. And I know Filip was aiming towards North Korea being next on this chopping block. And at that point, Spiro, you absolutely supported Filip's position. You said, yeah, I'm with Filip. And I raised my hand, and I was, we were 1-2. I was talking about Iran. But since then, you being diplomatic, you've been kind of staying away, saying, well, actually, I'm neutral. I'm the Switzerland here. Have you changed your position, Spiro? Are you Switzerland in this particular bet?
I think for now, I am going to remain Switzerland. I think they need to fully address what's going on in Syria. I think they need to wrap that up before they get involved somewhere else. But you guys are the experts here geopolitically.
Well, Filip made some excellent points. And for me, the conclusion is that is the reason the chances of any kind of overt attack and confrontation with North Korea is very slim, for all the reasons that Professor Kovacevic just cited, because it gets to get too close to Russia's backyard, and there is no way they are going to put up with that or accept it. And that truly, and of course, considering China, that is something that we will not do. And the other thing is, with North Korea for the past decade and a half, almost 2 decades, they have played this whole North Korea issue as like taking the genie out of the box once in a while and build this whole tension. So North Korea, if you go and look at the pattern in the past 15, 20 years, you see that it surfaces every 4 to 5 years, and generally it coincides with a new presidency. That was one of the pattern I noticed, because it became a hot issue during the second term for George W. Bush, then it completely went away. And then with Obama administration, boom, it became a hot issue for a while. It was there in the headlines for two months or so. Then it fizzled out. And now we are seeing with the new administration, Trump administration, it's a more intense, I agree with that. And it's much more heated because of all the developments we have been seeing involving the South China Sea. Because we already have this brewing tension with the Chinese over South China Sea, and you're reading what's happening in Philippines, etc. And North Korea goes along with that. My speculation is based on the previous patterns. I believe North Korea is not gonna escalate to a point of overt war. We're not gonna see that. As it happened before, I believe it's likely that it's going to fizzle out. Further, I believe it may be being played as a distraction card. And the reason I'm saying is I have been very closely watching another front, and that is Iran front, okay? And I want to start with this article that Eric Zues wrote. I believe it was published at Global Research, the Canadian website. It's a good website. And I'm glad Eric Zues wrote this piece, because I think it's extremely important. It came out about 7 days ago, a week ago. It is talking about, it's starting the article with this court ruling that I had not heard about. And obviously, according to Zues, nobody has heard about, because the media went completely silent on this. Here it is. The official US government line is that Iran is the main country responsible for the 9/11 attacks in America. Now, here's on the court case. On March 9th, 2016, a US civil court ruled that Iran must pay to some victims of the 9/11 attacks $10.5 billion in fines, okay? It says the Obama administration had no comment on it, and the US media completely ignored this verdict, okay? Nobody wrote about it, because I have been following all the developments on 9/11 since 9/11. I didn't know about this, so I'm really glad Eric Zues wrote about this. Here it is, though. This verdict is the only US official court ruling since 9/11 that is determining a state as directly responsible for 9/11. Now, this is very, very interesting, folks. Saudi Arabia, with all the Saudis involved, they have not been declared as a sponsored state for 9/11 by any course. And anytime we have had any kind of court proceedings against Saudi Arabia by the 9/11 families, okay, victims, family members. The government had shut it down, okay, or the case has been dropped. Same thing true for Pakistan. You know, we know the Pakistani involved. We know the Saudis involved. Interestingly, not a single hijacker or the so-called hijackers were Iranians, okay? You look at the nationalities of the so-called culprits, the hijackers for 9/11, there is not a single Iranian there. You have Libya, you have Yemen, you have Saudi Arabia, you have United Arab Emirates, you have Pakistan, but you don't have a single Iranian hijacker, okay? Now, another parallel that Eric Zeus draws here, and I think it's very astute, so great job, Eric, is that anytime the US government has claimed officially a state as a sponsor for 9/11 terror attacks, or whatever attacks you may want to call it, we have attacked that country immediately, because they declared that Afghanistan, with Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, was responsible state because of the Taliban, Mullah Omar, etc., for 9/11. As soon as that was done, within a couple of months, we invaded Afghanistan, right? They tried the same thing with Iraq. Believe me or not, if you remember, it was not only WMD. They tried very hard, the Bush administration, to tie Iraq to 9/11. If you remember, this came out in early 2002. They said there were some meetings of these Iraqi officials somewhere in Eastern Europe, and that the Saddam's regime met with some of the hijackers. And when later some investigative journalists, they pressed it, it proved to be BS. They couldn't prove it. It was made up. But guess what? They made a case with it, and it made it very easy for the United States, in addition to the made up hoax WMD with Iraq, to use, I mean, because, you know, as we know, the majority here in the United States, they just comprehend the catchphrases used by CNN without any proof. So they heard it enough that Saddam Hussein and Iraq was responsible for 9/11, and that paved the way, in addition to the hoax with WMD, to invasion of Iraq. And now we are looking at a lot of signs that says to me, I mean, from my standpoint, when I'm looking at it, that a lot of things, they are setting the stage against Iran. Of course, one is this lawsuit that was the first court ruling that is holding a state responsible and as an official sponsor of 9/11 attacks. I mean, it couldn't get more BS than this, because Iran had nothing to do with it, as we know that Iraq didn't have anything to do with it. So we have that. And I think it's very important, and I'm so glad that Eric Zeus wrote about it. Now, you add to this the fact that we have this unprecedented weapons sales deal signed with Saudi Arabia, $350 billion. Well, do you know who Saudi Arabia considers its #1 enemy? Iran. Saudi Arabia, Sunni, Iran, Shia, and the same thing with Yemen. The only nation that is really supporting Yemen, a victim in this case, has been Iran. And the culprits, those who are assaulting, waging assault, Saudi Arabia, with the backing of the United States and NATO, okay? Now, we have this $350 billion sales, which basically gives this big poke to Iran. And if you start looking at other developments, again, the US media is not reporting on this, is the Shia uprising in certain areas in Saudi Arabia that the US media is not really reporting on. And the Saudis regime's reaction and response to that. Just about a week ago, Saudi Arabia beheaded 11 protesters, Shia people in Saudi Arabia, 11 of them. And they accused some of them as having ties to Iran, okay? So a lot of things is brewing. This weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, giving the green light to Saudi Arabia on Yemen, okay? Saudi's escalation in his front against Shia populace, and that they know exactly that's one of the points to really poke with Iran. And then you add to that this lawsuit, the only lawsuit with a court verdict that is holding a state responsible for 9/11, that nobody's writing about. There is a reason. Everybody's writing about North Korea because that's one of the things they like to do, the shadow government, the deep state. They want your attention there, so you're looking there, while they are going and preparing to hit over there, right behind you where you're not paying attention. And another interesting quote here that he put, Eric Zues in his article, it says, President Trump on February 5th, 2017, was asked in a Super Bowl television interview what his policies would be regarding Iran, okay? This is only 3 months ago. And he answered, and he has the link for the video and transcript. They have total disregard for our country. They are the #1 terrorist state. Okay, everyone, remember with Iraq, remember George W. Bush and the axis of evil? It was North Korea, Iran, Iraq. Well, Iraq, we took care of. We destroyed the country. Now it's the balkanization of Iraq we are witnessing here. It's done deal with. That leaves 2, right? And this is where Trump is stepping in and is picking up where George W. Bush left. But listen to this. He's not calling North Korea on this. He's saying he considers Iran as the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Now, I want every one of the viewers here after this show to go and Google and find one case of terrorism in the past 15 years, including the 9/11 time frame, that Iran has been found to be responsible. I can't think of a single terrorism case involving Iranians and Iran as a regime. I'm not a fan of Iranian regime, but what I'm saying is, just as they did with Iraq, lies on WMD, lies on Iraq, Saddam's side to 9/11, we are seeing the same scenario brewing here with Iran, okay? And that is why I waged a bet and I said, okay, North Korea is a great distraction, but while all of us are paying attention to North Korea, we're gonna go and start increasing our covert operation that may turn into overt operation soon against Iran. Another thing I'm going to add here, take a look at the developments in this very important region, Sistan, Baluchistan, okay? And you look at between what is happening in Baluchistan and Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and some of these cases that are heating up in Baluchistan. CIA has been very active in Baluchistan. Al-Qaeda, who worked for CIA, some of their top leaders, they were positioned in Baluchistan area, okay? If you take a look at some of the top culprits, supposed leaders of Al-Qaeda, the ones who were trained by the CIA, directed and armed by the CIA, you would see that they had major headquarters established in Baluchistan. And lately, a lot of things heating up in Baluchistan. Therefore, I'm gonna stick with my bet, and you are not Switzerland. You're gonna pay half of it because you made a deal with Filip, Spiro. So it's 50-50. I don't care what you change the story to right now. Iran is the next prize. But I'm very interested to hear from Pi Ian, because I know he follows these developments and find out about his insights on this.
Is that the cue to me then? Are we on?
Yes, it is your cue.
You're muted, Pi. Your microphone's muted.
Okay, you can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Lot there, very interesting. Quickly, my note, I know I'm covering Iran, but I just had a brief thing, and I'd love Philip's or any of your comments on it, just with regard to North Korea, my observations. You know, Western harassment of North Korea is about China. In a lot of ways, it's about China. North Korea is a nuclear state. They lost millions upon millions of the Korean War. They're justifiably paranoid and very defensive. And the West knows innately not to go to war with North Korea, but nonetheless, in this madman theoried era of Donald Trump as an unhinged president, they need to be able to try and hit at China, or at least intimidate China by any means necessary. And North Korea, having China as its core sponsor, presents that opportunity. It's also just generally the Korean Peninsula, as most viewers and foreign affairs and history followers know, has been a divide and conquer strategy to keep these two Koreas separated, while both parts currently and really over the past several years have been gravitating towards China economically and China-Russia combined security-wise. And hence why there's further nervousness on the part of the Washington consensus, not just routinely over North Korea, but really South Korea, falling into a rising Chinese global economic orbit, which then I just saw something on Japan and China reaching out to its arch rival and historical foe Japan, just by necessity, because of economic necessity on the part of Japan, which has been in deflation for the past 27 years and cannot just hang its hat and coat purely on a Washington consensus and Atlanticist platform, despite the Trilateral Commission, despite post-World War II economic development between the U.S. and Japan. And just the Koreas, the sunshine policy that I'm sure you all know of, and viewers, if you don't know, the sunshine policy is like a perennial kind of being propped up routinely to have, at the very least, an approach towards reconciliation between the two Koreas. I mean, you have cousins, you have family members, separated by that parallel, and wishing not just to be able to have relations with each other, but really to have a unified Korea. Each time the sunshine policy is routinely put on the table by Koreans, not just North or South, but generally by Koreans, it is sabotaged by U.S. and Western interference, again, because of a 2 millennia old platform of divide and conquer in order to keep bases there, in order to keep a firm military presence in East Asia. So just my thoughts with regard to North Korea. As far as 9/11 and Iran, I mean, Iran being involved in any capacity with 9/11, why not just claim that Venezuela or Zimbabwe or Cuba were also responsible for 9/11 as well? Just really any kind of enemy of or perceived enemy or desired enemy of the U.S. Should just become de facto 9/11 participant. Those claiming Iran was in any way involved with 9/11 are, in a way, only bringing the historical travesty of 9/11 closer to being outed as a historical reality. I mean, if you're going to just keep throwing jelly at the wall as far as this state or this nation or these people are responsible for 9/11 as effectively being 5 times what Pearl Harbor was, then you're really begging the question over credibility of your own intelligence and governmental agencies describing 9/11 for what it was domestically within the U.S. And maybe partly why that lawsuit, Sibel, that you mentioned was not advertised or discussed widely with regard to domestic mainstream corporate press, possibly, I'm guessing, but I would imagine it's such a traumatic incident in most people's lives for obvious reasons, and it kicked off so much belligerence overseas that if you start shifting narratives and then advertising the shifting of narratives, it may just open a critical can of worms over, well, wait, where was all this about Iran being involved in 9/11 over the past 16 years. So, it also just shows desperation, not just rhetorically, but strategically, because they cannot get at Iran, for lack of a better phrase. So they can't, just kind of pull these things out of the woodworks, like, Khomeini, the Ayatollah Khomeini was a CIA agent, or Iran was responsible for 9/11, or it's responsible for global terrorism worse than any other nation. It's just that when you don't have capacity for infiltration and interference like you did in decades past, you just have to throw the kitchen sink perceptually, and that's what they're doing. Saudi Arabia, I'll get into this a little bit further, but yes, it's Iran's core rival, not just with regard to energy production and exporting and their twin roles in OPEC, but obviously strategically within the region of Southwest Asia, and more so in a global geo-financial and geoeconomic capacity with regard to what oil and natural gas really are. How do you price and trade this stuff 43 years into a waning petrodollar standard, which is propped up by the Washington Consensus? It's notable that Saudi Arabia, despite its belligerence towards Iran, despite its adamance toward its neighbor, Yemen, and trying to quell Yemen and really appropriate Yemen's oil because it's kind of peaking out itself. Nonetheless, Saudi Arabia is being pulled eastward, and towards the building Shanghai Cooperation Organization and Central Asian and Russian and Chinese-backed consensus, and really kind of increasingly resembling a rope in a global tug-of-war. So Saudi Arabia is definitely a litmus with regard to general global economic and geopolitical momentum. The thing you mentioned about Sistan, Baluchistan, and eastern Iran bordering western Pakistan, it's been ongoing for a while as far as tensions being stoked by foreign intelligence agencies and agents within that region. You have to, as always, ask, like, que bono, who benefits, what are the real stakes there, why that particular region. And to me, it's just briefly, it's twin reasons, two reasons. One is that it's about preventing energy pipelines being built from southern Iran and bordering the Gulf eastward through that border into Pakistan. Initially, what was called the Peace Pipeline, or the Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline from yesterdecade, was interfered with Delhi, with India being asked to step away from that arrangement, and India did. So what happened? China came in lieu of India and took up that baton from India, agreeing with Pakistan and Iran to have natural gas exported from Iran through Pakistan, and then rather than continuing into India, for now at least, being segmented north into China, and tellingly into regions of China where, not coincidentally, there is Uyghur unrest, there is domestic unrest that is being also stoked by Western intelligence and sabotage. It doesn't write off, by the way, opportunities for, in the future, revisiting that initial IPI peace pipeline platform, namely that India being eventually added back. And that's quite, frankly, Iran's ongoing very shrewd strategy is that, this isn't over. This love fest is not over, India. You're in many ways our brethren as far as, being a South Asian partner. And right now, you may have your interests in not wanting to be a part of it. We know for real what your true economic and trade interests are. We know that you want this energy, and we're not averse, and I don't think China is averse either, to eventually having it revisited, namely energy being sourced from Iran through Pakistan into India. So the inverse, if you will, of divide and conquer. So on those points, then, let me just get to the issue of war or potential war with Iran. In general, war with Iran in the global energy sense, just stick to energy for now rather than military logistics or, who can do more damage to the other side. In the global oil and natural gas sense, it's the equivalent of burning your own village to save it, namely to go to war with Iran. It would immediately collapse the US dollar because of the role of the dollar in global oil and natural gas pricing and trading, as well as block that very narrow, very critical Strait of Hormuz, where so much energy traverses on a daily basis, from energy exporting to the rest of the world. Hence, in large part, why it hasn't been even attempted war with Iran, namely, despite Iran being perennially listed for 2 decades onward in neoconservative listings of nations to target for decimation, occupation, and resource appropriation. So February of 2012, actually January of 2012, Dmitry Rogozin, who's Russia's former envoy to NATO, had stated categorically, and I quote, "Iran is our close neighbor just south of the Caucasus. Should anything happen to Iran, should Iran get drawn into any political or military hardships, this will be a direct threat," I repeat, direct threat to our national security, end quote. Our national security being Russia's national security. And that, again, was Dmitry Rogozin back in January of 5 years ago. who is Russia's former envoy to NATO. February of 2012, just a month afterward, the former member of the Russian Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colonel General Leonid Ivashov, said that Russia was ready to use military power to defend Iran and Syria. An attack on Syria or Iran is to be considered an indirect attack on Russia. That was in the Russian English press. We know subsequent to that what has resulted as far as Russia's intervention in defending Syria as its ally and the Assad government within Syria, which then begs the question over should anything happen with regard to a Western attack on Iran. You'd see at the very least an emulation of what Russia has gone out of its way to do in assisting the government of Syria, the autonomous sovereign government of Syria. China. So you have Russia's interests vis-a-vis its partner, its neighbor, and its ally, Iran, and China as well, really kind of in this triumvirate of Russia, Iran, China. China's Defense Minister General Chang Wangzhong paid an official 3-day visit to Tehran, Iran, last November of 2016 to hold talks with senior Iranian officials, including Iranian Defense Minister Brigadier General Hossein Dehghan, who had extended the general from China the official invite in the first place. The Chinese defense minister stressed the importance of improving bilateral Iranian-Chinese and multilateral defense and military cooperation on global issues. And it's for obvious reasons. China imports nearly, as of today, nearly 700,000 barrels per day of crude oil from Iran alone. Chinese state energy refiner Sinopec Corporation and its state-run oil trader Zhujuai Zhenrong Corp, the two biggest Chinese lifters of Iranian oil, are set to roll over annual supply agreements with the National Iranian Oil Company, the NIOC, with combined volumes of about 505,000 barrels per day, again, just in this year alone. So close to 700,000 generally, just with regard to those juggernaut Chinese firms, over 500,000 barrels per day. The Moscow-led Eurasian Economic Union aims to finalize a free trade deal with Iran by the end of this year in an attempt by Russia and its fellow members to deepen ties with Iran. Iran and Russia have sought to deepen their relationship since the European Union and U.S. imposed their sanctions on Moscow in 2014 and certainly on Iran well before then. Russia and Iran just last month signed a key oil for goods barter deal, again in May of 2017. And they signed this deal in order to further their showings of collectively escaping the 43-year-old petrodollar standard, which was imposed upon the world by the Washington Consensus after the demise of the Bretton Woods-initiated gold standard, which I had covered in a prior piece for Newsbud. And that's because Washington essentially back then defaulted on its gold promises to foreign nations that were wishing back then in the early 70s to redeem their gold for inflated US dollars. So it was a passing on the buck. It's been nearly a half a century since it, but it is waning. You have innovation around it by Eastern powers, and thus the sense of desperation, if not just very high urgency with regard to an intervention to try and separate these various powers from each other. Plus, Moscow's further pulling Iran's rival, as I mentioned, Saudi Arabia, towards itself, and its alliance with China and the global energy fear in what's being described by Western press as like a, quote, axis of love, basically between Russia and Saudi Arabia right now. They're being described as an axis of love to bring into being a new global oil order from the purview of Moscow. This order will more than likely involve new pricing and trading mechanisms, which again are increasingly going to be divorced from this US petrodollar hegemony. So these are really the very deep, very, very, very serious economic stakes for the West. It's notable the European Council on Foreign Relations recently labeled Russia and Iran as, quote, the new power couple in the Middle East, end quote. And that's not just in reference to their mutual Syria policy, Russia and Iran's Syria policy. There's, again, the more esoteric economic angles about energy strategies. The delivery of the Russian S-300 missile system to Iran is a sign that Russia has an interest in bolstering Tehran's military might while ultimately protecting its own Russian interests regionally in its own homeland. Because, again, should Iran fall, as have, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, sought after the falling of Syria. Should Iran fall, then Russia and China collectively would be increasingly surrounded, which in fact is the end goal of Washington and its tightest allies with regard to capturing that heartland, that Central Asian heartland, and preventing the comeuppance of any other single power or collective bloc against Western hegemony. So it's in Washington's and NATO's and the collective West's interests to proceed with relieving Iran of its imposed sanctions. Just, let's put everything on the table and be as sober as possible, because war with Iran is, as I said at the outset, a shooting of your own foot. So it's best to proceed with relieving Iran of these sanctions for the sake of keeping not only the anti-nuclear JCPOA deal in its desired place from the West's point of view, but also because these sanctions are leading Iran further eastward while sparking multilateral fiscal innovations around the sanctions in general. So a lot of interesting stuff happening, but Iran is not its neighbors. It is a large, sovereign, powerful nation that, although is not nuclear armed, has everything just about short of nuclear armaments with regard to strategy, defense, and shrewd policy with the rest of the world.
Well, that's exactly why. That's exactly why. Even though Sibel's case is very, very convincing, I think the next war is going to be against North Korea. It seems to me that, Iran is a more open political system, and the U.S. might decide to subvert the current government by using the arsenal of a color revolution, the arsenal of soft power. Whereas in the case of North Korea, that's not possible. That's why the CIA has a separate mission center for North Korea and not for Iran and not for China and not for Russia, because those other countries, the countries such as China, Russia, and Iran, are much more open to other types of influence. But in terms of the North Korea, there is no solution, quotation mark, without the military solution. And so the way everything is building up is that there is going to be some kind of a provocation, and we are dealing with the president in the White House who is extremely unpredictable, and there could be some kind of a provocation set up by the deep state, and there is a deep state in South Korea too. In fact, if you look at the recent news reports, and I looked at some of the South Korean newspapers in English, such as the Korea Daily, and there is a controversy there that the military and the Secretary of Defense did not inform the new President Moon on the fact that four additional launchers have been placed in South Korea. Imagine that, the military not informing the president about additional war material, war equipment being placed in South Korea. This means that there is essentially a parallel government that wants a military solution. What they want is some kind of a lightning strike against the North Korean leadership. They think it's possible. The Russian experts say it is not possible, but that's because Russia has a stake, just as in the case of Iran, they have a stake for the US not to attack North Korea. However, I have to point out and refer all of you to my article on the North Korean connection of the Russian ambassador Andrei Karlov. He has spent most of his diplomatic career on the Korean peninsula. He spoke Korean language. He was an excellent friend of the father of Kim Jong-il. And so it's easy to suppose that he also was known by the son, who's the leader of North Korea right now. And he was the person, according to different news reports in Russia, that was able to de-escalate the tension that was building up in the early years of the 21st century. And so if he had been still alive, he perhaps would have been able to de-escalate this tension too. But one of the rationales for why he was taken out could have been that just to eliminate the possibility of a peaceful resolution. Let me also mention that since the beginning of the year, North Korea tested its missile defense system 9 times, 3 times in the last 20 days. So this means that there is some kind of an urgency, something is going on, and that the U.S. will respond in some way. The only question is that can you respond just a little bit without going all the way? And the answer is no. You cannot respond just a little bit without going all the way. As I said before, geopolitically speaking, there is more sense in the U.S. Fighting against North Korea than against Iran. Iran, if you look at the map, Afghanistan and Iraq are already pretty much, the U.S. troops are already there. So the southern flank is pretty much under control at this point of time. What's not under control is this issue in East Asia, the connections between Russia and China and South Korea. So in a certain sense, the U.S. has to take a stand there. However, whoever plans the war against North Korea is also working against the interest of the United States, but it's not working against the interest of a specific faction within the U.S. government, the deep state that wants to discredit the present president, Donald Trump, and wants to develop some kind of a semi-authoritarian government in the United States. So I'm afraid, I know this is a lot of speculation, but I'm afraid that under the cover of a big war in Asia, the foundations of U.S. democracy may be shaken to the ground. In other words, we may end up with some kind of a military junta taking over in the United States, justifying this under the pretext of national security reasons. The way it was supposed to have, it was being planned in the early 1960s when Kennedy wanted to develop some kind of a détente with the Soviet Union. I will refer all the listeners and viewers to a fictional novel called 7 Days in May. 7 Days in May, it was published in the early 1960s. They talk about the military taking over the U.S. government. The conspiracy was averted in the end, but that's fiction. Who knows what's going to happen in the real life? I think we are in for some very, very serious developments in the realm of geopolitics in the world. This is probably not going to happen by the end of this year because the missile defense that the U.S. is installing in South Korea is going to take a lot of time to put in place. So we will see the accumulation of tensions, I think, until the end of the year, and then sometime next year. So not this year. So sometime next year, if Trump lasts in his office until next year, we may see a big war in Asia.
Okay, well, I think the bet is still on. So everybody reserve their $250, two of you, Spiro and Professor Kovacevic. I have my $5 reserve. Still, it makes it even that much more interesting. Now that we almost wrapped up our first hour, we would like to take some questions. Spiro, I know you have been monitoring all the questions coming. We also have a couple of questions that have been asked frequently from Newsbud and a few short updates. So Spiro, how do we go about taking the questions and directing them to who they are asking the questions from?
Okay, yes, we have been getting some of the questions coming in. Some of the questions were geared towards the topic, and the chat is moving along pretty quickly. And we do encourage everyone to participate in the chat. For those of you that are watching this video after it's live, we finish this live broadcast, the live chat does not appear. So if you want to participate in these live chats, you have to be here live as it's taking place. Now, we have been getting a lot of the frequent questions. We'll go over a couple of those. One of the questions, here's a couple that we got on this one just today in this chat. One person asked, how do I sign up for Newsbud and remain anonymous? You added me to Boiling Frogs post about 8 years ago. So it sounds like this person is interested in getting a Newsbud subscription, but wants to remain anonymous. Sibel?
Well, every single subscriber, and we have over 2,000 subscribers, members of Newsbud community, they are all anonymous. Now, some people, they like to use their own real name, screen name, their real first name and last name by choice. Because when you subscribe to Newsbud, we send you a login information. Once you log in, then you can change your password, you can have an avatar, etc. So it just depends on what screen name you want to select and go with. And I would say our people, maybe 75% of our subscribers, when they comment, they have screen names other than their own real name. So it is completely up to individuals. As far as other privacy concerns, we do not place cookies on anyone's computer. We don't do that. We are not in that business. We don't share your contact information, your information with anyone, unlike many so-called alternative and the mainstream media outlets that they sell your information to advertisers, including all your profiles, your habits, how many times you click, your name, your email address. It's only Newsbud. So it is not, and of course, if you're using payment method, PayPal or regular credit card, etc., they're going to have your information. That doesn't reside in our computer. So we have 100% respect for your privacy, and it's up to you to pick your own screen name, username, and anybody who wishes to be anonymous will stay anonymous. It's just from the beginning, it is your choice.
Oh, that's right. And as you've mentioned before, Sibel, previously in other shows, we don't store people's credit card informations, for example. We don't hang on to any of that stuff. So yes, we do respect your privacy and your anonymity. So thanks for that question. We have another question from Amber. She's asking, will you be hiring interns in the next 2 years?
Amber, thank you for the question. I have been getting that questions a lot, and that is something that we would love to do. Right now, especially with our Kickstarter, right now it's looking sluggish. We may have to cut back on some of those types of services. It just depends on who that intern is, because as you know, it's not only bringing on board an intern, but then somebody has to help the intern, supervise, etc. In fact, now that we are talking about our policies, etc., one of the reasons, as you can see on our YouTube channel, this is Newsbud Boiling Frogs Post YouTube channel. We are, this is basically the only roundtable you will see for a while that is public. All our roundtables will be for Newsbud community. It will be with the B-rolls, etc., recorded on our website. You may see the trailer of it. That's what we are using the YouTube channel for. It is for the trailers and for announcement. That is YouTube's community, and we don't like YouTube. We don't like Google. We don't like Facebook. We have our own separate community. It's newsbud.com. So you can become a member, and you're welcome to this community. And you may have noticed that we don't have any longer comment section for our YouTube trailers, etc., because it is time consuming. We have to put one person in charge every day, every hour, going and checking to remove trolls and offensive comments, ugly language, etc. And because of our resources being limited, we just want to perform those chores for our own website, for our own community, because our community members can come and post comments whenever they want, as many comments as they want. But we don't deal with YouTube's community. We don't like YouTube's. We are not part of YouTube community. We declared our independence. We have our own private servers, multiple servers. We have our own private streaming services. We have washed our hands off of YouTube. So those of you who are interested to see our trailers, please come and watch it. That's fine, as long as they're on YouTube, but that's not our community. Our community is newsbud.com. These types of roundtables are everyday, daily shows, presentations will be available only for Newsbud community members. And Amber, yes, if you are the Amber who I think you are, you have been very generous contributing to our Kickstarter. You're a student, and you just promoted our T-shirt that you got for the previous Kickstarter. You're an exception. If you would like to work with us with our social media promotions, etc., we would love to hear from you. I know you may have signed up for our Newsbud Academy. Send me an email through Newsbud's contact page, mention this roundtable and this conversation, I'll get your email address and I will respond to you personally. Thank you.
There also has been a number of comments here about the shirt that I'm wearing, the Newsbud shirt. This is brand new. We just got it. It's not available yet, but it will be available soon on our website, on newsbud.com. We also have some other things that are going to be available here. The Newsbud hat, the baseball hat. It's great. And some other things, of course, will be available on the Newsbud website soon. In the near future, we're very excited about it. We wanted to share it with you guys. I've been wanting to promote it here for you guys. Sibel, you look like you're...
Yes, let me see, because I jotted down some of the frequently asked questions to answer, and I don't know where I placed it, but people are asking, they are saying, what if the Kickstarter, we had 2 successful Kickstarters. What if this Kickstarter is not successful and you don't reach your goal? Because as you know, it's an all or nothing platform, meaning if we don't reach all the way to that 115,000 goal, we're not going to get any of the amount, this $30,000, $40,000 you see there. Nobody's credit cards will be charged, so nobody has given any money at that point. Nobody is charged. At this point, nobody's credit card is charged. They are asking if we are going to fold. The answer is absolutely no. But as I said, we are not a YouTubers. We are not the bloggers. There's nothing wrong with bloggers or YouTubers, but we are not that. We are a full-fledged news organization that is community-based and is people-supported. So anybody who wants to watch our daily video shows soon, this is going to apply to our articles as well. They can come and they can join our Newsbud community. We welcome all of you to come and join us. But one of the things we have said from the beginning, we said this is a news organization created by the people. We didn't say this is a news organization created by people. You know, the same thing when they say the government of the people, for the people, by the people, there's a the there, there's a THE there. So for us, the people are Newsbud community members. And Newsbud community members are the reasons we are able to produce shows, write articles, analysis, have investigative reports, have the aggregated news. So what we do is because of our Newsbud community members, and we deliver to the Newsbud community members. So I hope this is clear. We never claim to be, we are for all people around the world, the trolls, the CIA, the FBI people who love, red pill, people who love, no. We said we are community-based. We are answerable only to the people who support us. And I am so thankful to our community. We have had this incredible community that have helped us expand and operate and be here. But our productions is not, like the YouTubers, bloggers, that it's not out there, for entertainment or some kind of a hobby we do on the side. This is jobs for us. We have dedicated our lives. You are Newsbud community members, you facilitate that. You're providing us with the salary so we can spend 10, 15 hours a day, produce these, edit these shows. You are the one who make it possible for us to have multiple servers. When you see the videos on our site, these are not YouTube videos. That's a cheap, disgusting place. We are trying to get out of YouTube, people. We announced this. If you missed it, go and watch our previous roundtable. We are not YouTubers. We are our own community run by the people, for the people. You want to join this people, our community, please come and join us. But we are not YouTubers. We do not support YouTube. We do not support Facebook. We exist for our community. Our community make us who we are today. They are the ones who facilitate this entire productions you see. So I hope I was clear. I don't know if I left out anything. Spiro, correct me if I did.
No, I think you pretty much covered it pretty well there. I mean, we thank everyone out there who does support our operation. We have covered this previously in other videos that we are moving away from these establishment platforms that are tightly knitted to government agencies, and they so many sites out there depend, they put their whole all their chips in one basket, basically, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing them starting to pull the plug. And a lot of these sites are really starting to feel the pinch on this. And some of them are going to end up disappearing because they are dependent upon the same establishment that they claim to be fighting sometimes, you know. So that's one of the big reasons why we are moving away from the YouTube platform. We know that a lot of people are out here on YouTube, and we've been uploading our trailers for our exclusive videos on our site, and you can come for a very reasonable price. You can join the Newsbud community, and you'll have access to daily content that we're running on our own servers. We're streaming these videos for everyone, and so this roundtable here is a nice little kind of preview of one of the things you can expect as a Newsbud community member. We're going to be having a monthly show here with Pi Ian, Professor Filip Kovacevic, Sibel Edmonds, as in addition to Peter Lee. He's also going to be joining this monthly roundtable that we're going to look at the events that took place over the month and then looking forward. So that's in addition to all of our regular daily shows and articles and everything. We're definitely looking forward to that. Sibel, you look like you're ready to jump in one more time.
Yes, I just found one of the other questions. One of the comments actually has been, they said, well, it should be voluntary, you know. Well, it is voluntary. We do not force anyone to subscribe to Newsbud and watch our videos or read our analysis. And soon we're going to have some mini documentaries that we're going to be making it available to the people being the awake people who are saying no to establishment. I know Pi Ian had a good analogy between punk rock and rebelling and Newsbud community, and that was spot on, Pi. So absolutely, it's voluntary. So one of the things we don't understand, I mean, there are some people who are coming and they're screaming and they're saying, why isn't this available? So we will be only people who want to support it, watch it. It's like, well, yeah, it's voluntary. We don't force anyone. Why do you want to watch our videos? If you find reasons and you want to watch our videos because we are independent, we provide some of the top expert analysis video presentations, then you can volunteer, come and join our community. But nobody's going to force you. And there are millions of sites there. And everybody has a choice. So I just wanted to go on record as saying it's voluntary. If you want to subscribe, nobody forces you to watch these videos. We only make it available to our community, to the people who make this possible. Everybody else, they can go do their own things. The other thing, analogy that I wanted to bring was, I know the people who appreciate the difference between McDonald's, let's say, fast food or Burger King, versus this nice local dining establishment that only uses organic ingredients and has like food that is made and cooked per order. I mean, you know, there are differences you expect to see. One is going to be a bit more exclusive. One is going to have higher prices because if you want to eat non-GMO food, you have to say, okay, I'm willing for my health to pay the extra and eat that. And that, again, is voluntary. So if for news and YouTubers, bloggers, one-man show, one female show, nothing wrong with that. You want to eat McDonald's, I mean, you can do that. You can go to YouTube, Facebook. I don't know what other platforms are out there. But if you want really incredible analysts, professionals, independent, nonpartisan, not pocketed by the mega corporations, people that don't give you GMO equivalent advertisement ads popping up, then you can volunteer and pick Newsbud. And it's very clear. So McDonald's seekers of the news, junk news, should not come and look for Newsbud and say, why Newsbud is not giving me free junk? Because we are not in the junk business. You want junk business? There are many singular shows out there. You can consume as much as you want. If you get cancer of the soul, that is by choice. You have volunteered for it. If you want to have pure, nonpartisan, independent, from people who have integrity, but people who have expertise, I would invite anyone to come and put forth names of presenters who would, for example, match Professor Kovacevic here in terms of the background, educational background, experience, living in those countries, someone who has been activist basically all his life. I would ask anyone to come and match that expertise. So that is not McDonald's fault. That is, if you care for your mind, for your soul, for your brain, for pure knowledge, free of gunks, free of those GMOs, which is the ads and agenda, you're welcome. Otherwise, we only cater to Newsbud community. Those are the people that we work for and we work with.
Well, again, we'd like to thank everyone out there, everyone in the live chat for participating today and sharing your questions and your thoughts. Of course, our own Newsbud team here, our guests. I'd like to thank Professor Filip Kovacevic, the founder and editor of Newsbud, Sibel Edmonds. And Ian, you had a quick question. And this is going to be a quick, short answer because we got to wrap this up. But one of the commenters here, CIA Network, asks, Pi, what's your favorite band? And I think he was asking that because of the punk rock reference. So I figured we'd like to get that one in there real quick. Oh, you're muted, Pi. Your microphone's muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Favorite band is The Clash, Joe Strummer, Paul Simon, and Mick Jones. Topper Headin. Yeah, I mean, they weren't just a band. It was the only band that mattered, quote unquote. So any fans of The Clash will understand that phrase is etched into the memory of not just fans, but the music industry and wider Western culture in general. It wasn't just punk rock. It was a revolt against social conditioning, and not just lyrics, but musically, phenomenologically. It begged the question over what anything means in 1970s Britain, where so many people were starving and there was such stagnancy. People felt the hypocrisy, and The Clash as a band came together to really, really encapsulate frustrations, not just acutely, but against the wider system at large. So they had to burn out. They couldn't be around like U2 doing arena shows, and hence they were more than just a band, quote unquote.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And again, stick around. Go to newsbud.com for more information. Check out the subscription page. You can see there's daily content there available, only available at newsbud.com. And till the next edition, this is Spiro and the Newsbud team signing out.